My name is Morgan Lyles, and at 35, I never thought I would be telling this story as a widow. When my husband Joffrey Hale died suddenly, my world splintered into fragments I could not gather. But what no one tells you is that grief is only the first wave. The storm that followed was darker, crueler, and carried the face of family. Before I tell you how my life turned upside down after my husband's death, I'd love to know, where are you watching from right now? Drop it in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe, your support means more than you know. I met Joffrey 12 years ago at an art charity event downtown. I was 23, a volunteer arranging watercolor landscapes, still finishing my teaching degree. He was 28, already earning a reputation as a financial advisor with a sharp mind and a softer heart. I remember fumbling an expensive vase that evening, my hands clumsy with nerves. Before it hit the ground, Joffrey caught it midair. "Nice reflexes," I whispered, embarrassed. "Financial markets wait for no one," he replied with a grin that made my stomach flip. That night we spoke for hours about Renaissance art, his family's business empire, my dream of teaching children. Joffrey came from wealth, but he wore it lightly. His intelligence and kindness drew me in. Within 6 months, we married in a simple lakeside ceremony. His mother, Courtney Smith, hugged me as if I had always belonged. Absent, however, was Joffrey's sister Casey Hale, who claimed she was too busy. It was the first of many small betrayals. Our early years were simple and hopeful. Joffrey refused to lean on family money. We rented a modest apartment, saved diligently, and after 5 years, bought our dream home, a colonial-style house with a yard that begged for flowers and laughter. We poured our weekends into sanding floors, painting walls, planting a garden. Every nail hammered was a promise to each other. The only shadow was infertility. After years of trying, doctors confirmed my severe endometriosis. Children would likely never come naturally. The nights I wept, Joffrey held me close. "Family is more than biology," he'd whisper. "We have each other. That's enough." His faith carried me when mine broke. But the Hale family dynamics were fraught. Their wealth was old, rooted in real estate and expanded into investments. Joffrey's father, Thomas, was harsh and demanding, and Casey learned to manipulate rather than build. Joffrey, on the other hand, worked diligently, proving his worth. Courtney often told me, "You bring out the best in my son." Casey, she has ambition, but none of Joffrey's integrity. Casey eventually married Victor Miller, a man for money but with no talent for keeping it. They orbited our lives like unwelcome satellites, throwing occasional barbs about my little teacher's salary or our modest lifestyle compared to theirs. Joffrey shrugged them off, but I always felt their disdain. The last year of Joffrey's life, he worked long hours on a special project. When I peeked in his office, I'd see spreadsheets, files, a tension in his shoulders he tried to mask with a smile. "Just family business," he'd say. "Nothing for you to worry about." He also updated his life insurance and had me meet with his attorney, Samuel Ortega. At the time, it seemed like responsible planning. I didn't know he was preparing for war. The day it all changed was ordinary. Joffrey kissed me goodbye, promised Thai food for dinner, and headed to his office. Hours later, his assistant Riley called, voice trembling, "Morgan, Joffrey collapsed. They're rushing him to Northwestern Memorial. Please, hurry." By the time I arrived, it was over. A massive heart attack, undiagnosed until it was too late. At 40, my husband was gone. I collapsed into Courtney's arms, both of us drowning in grief. Then, as if summoned by blood's cruel gravity, Casey and Victor arrived. Casey's eyes were dry. Her voice clipped. "I need his keys and phone. As his sister, I'll handle his affairs." Too broken to fight, I let her walk away with his watch, his wallet, his phone. The funeral was a blur of black clothes and pitying eyes. Casey hijacked every decision, insisted on a lavish service, an open casket, music Joffrey would have hated. The Hale family has traditions, she dismissed my protests. I stood at his graveside, barely standing, while Casey tossed a white rose with a face devoid of grief. 3 days later, I returned home seeking solitude. Instead, I found an unfamiliar luxury SUV in the driveway. Lights on inside. My heart sank as I stepped through the door. The furniture was rearranged. Joffrey's leather chair gone, replaced by Casey's ornate antiques. Our photos stripped from the mantel. The air reeked of Casey's perfume. Finally decided to show up? She asked from the kitchen, swirling a glass of my wine. Victor hovered behind her, looking guilty but resolute. "What are you doing in my house?" I demanded. Casey's smile was razor-sharp. "Correction. The Hale family house. Victor and I have moved in." I froze. "This is my home. My name is on the deed." A technicality, she waved off. "Dad's will clearly said all properties return to the family trust if a Hale dies without heirs. Joffrey left no children. You have no claim." She handed me a scribbled list. My grandmother's china marked donated. Wedding gifts marked sold. Photos marked discarded. "You sold my belongings?" I whispered. "The less significant ones. You may collect your clothes." I trembled with fury. "This is illegal." Casey's expression hardened. She pulled a yellowed document from her bag. "This is Dad's original will. It proves everything." I stared at the paper, my grief twisting into rage. It was outdated, irrelevant, and she knew it. But Casey leaned closer, her voice dripping venom. "You failed the one thing Joffrey needed. You couldn't give him children. You are nothing but a placeholder. This house was never yours." Tears burned my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I whispered, "How dare you?" Her smile widened. "You have until tomorrow to pack. Otherwise, Frank," she gestured, and a man in a security uniform stepped from the shadows, "will escort you out." I stood in my own hallway, surrounded by strangers, and realized I was being erased. I spent the night after Casey's invasion curled up on Jada's couch. Jada wasn't just my closest friend, she was the sister I had chosen long before I ever met Joffrey. We met in college, bonded over cheap coffee and endless late-night study sessions, and she had been at my side through every chapter of my life. She was the maid of honor at my wedding, the first person I called after every doctor's appointment during our struggles with infertility, the one who knew how to make me laugh when I wanted to cry. Now, she was the only safe place I had left. I lay there still wearing the clothes I had buried my husband in. My suitcase sat half unpacked beside me, and every time I closed my eyes, I saw Casey smirk, her hand scribbling across that inventory list of my stolen life. Sleep never came. Jada tiptoed into the living room at dawn, a mug of coffee in each hand. "You look like hell," she said softly, setting one down in front of me. I laughed without humor. "That's generous." She sat beside me, her dark curls a halo in the morning light. "You can't let her get away with this, Morgan. You need to fight." Fight. The word felt foreign. I barely survived watching dirt fall on Joffrey's coffin, and now I was expected to wage war with his sister. But Jada's words planted a seed. That same morning, my phone buzzed. The name on the screen made my stomach flip, Samuel Ortega. Joffrey's attorney. "Morgan," his voice was low, urgent, "I've been trying to reach you. I need you to come to my office today. It's important." I almost told him I couldn't, grief had made even breathing feel like work, but something in his tone pulled me upright. An hour later, I walked into his downtown office. The blinds were drawn, and papers covered his desk in neat, deliberate stacks. "First," he said, standing to shake my hand, "I am so sorry for your loss. Joffrey was more than a client. He was a friend." I nodded, unable to speak. He reached into his drawer and slid a sealed envelope toward me. My name was written across the front in Joffrey's handwriting. I traced the familiar loops and swirls with trembling fingers. "He gave me this 3 weeks ago," Samuel explained. He said, if the worst happened, you should have it immediately. I opened it, my pulse hammering in my ears. My dearest Morgan. If you are reading this, it means I failed to outlive the storm I feared. I hope you can forgive me for leaving you to face what comes next. For months, I have been investigating Casey. She has been stealing from the family company for years, siphoning millions through shell accounts. When I confronted her, she threatened you. She said if I exposed her, she would take everything from you, the house, your reputation, your work. I couldn't let that happen without a plan. In my office, behind the painting of the lighthouse, there is a wall safe. The code is our anniversary date. Inside you'll find the evidence, bank records, forged documents, recordings of Casey's threats. It's enough to bring her down. I updated my will to ensure everything I owned passes directly to you. The house is yours, Morgan. Always. Please, trust Samuel. Trust my mother. Do not trust Victor. He knows more than he admits. I love you. You were my anchor, my better half. Whatever happens, remember that. Always yours, Joffrey. The words blurred as tears fell onto the page. Samuel's voice broke the silence. We'll need that evidence, Morgan. It's the only way to stop her. That afternoon, Jada and I drove back to the house while Casey was out. We parked down the street, hearts racing. The locks had been changed, but I still remembered the fake rock Joffrey had once tucked by the garden shed, a spare key we used to laugh about. Inside, the house was a battlefield of rearranged furniture and missing memories. But Joffrey's office, tucked in the back hallway, looked untouched. The painting of the lighthouse still hung above his desk. My hand shook as I lifted it and entered our anniversary date into the safe's keypad. With a soft click, it opened. Inside was a USB drive, an envelope of cash, our passports, and Joffrey's grandfather's pocket watch. I nearly collapsed with relief. It felt like his hand was still guiding me. Back at Jada's apartment, we plugged the drive into her laptop. File after file opened, bank statements showing transfers to offshore accounts, emails authorizing fraudulent transactions, photos of falsified contracts. And then, an audio recording. Casey's voice filled the room, sharp as a knife. If you breathe a word of this, I'll ruin her. Morgan will lose everything, her job, her house, her name. I'll make sure she regrets ever marrying you. I clapped a hand over my mouth. Jada muttered, Jesus Christ. For the first time since Joffrey's death, I felt something stir inside me that wasn't grief. It was fury. And it gave me strength. But Casey wasn't finished. The next morning, my principal called me into her office. She looked uncomfortable, folding her hands tightly on her desk. Morgan, we've received some concerning calls. A woman identifying herself as your sister-in-law expressed fears about your emotional stability. Given the circumstances, we have to place you on temporary leave. It felt like the floor dropped beneath me. This is insane. I'm fine. Her voice softened. I believe you. But the district has policies. Please take this as paid leave, for now. I stumbled out of the school in a daze. Within hours, whispers reached me, rumors of Joffrey having an affair, of me trapping him in an unhappy marriage, of me refusing to have children. Lies spreading like wildfire, and I didn't need to ask who lit the match. That night, Samuel called. Casey's attorneys filed a petition, he said grimly. They're contesting the will. They claim you manipulated Joffrey during a period of diminished capacity. My breath caught. They're saying I forced him? Yes. It's a stalling tactic. But it gives her time to keep liquidating assets and smearing your name. I pressed my forehead to the cool glass of Jada's window, my reflection pale and hollow. Casey wasn't satisfied with my home. She wanted my life. And for the first time, I realized, if I didn't fight back, she would win. Victor texted from an unknown number just after midnight, we need to talk. Alone. Jada read it over my shoulder and arched an eyebrow. If he's luring you somewhere shady, I'm coming with mace and a portable halo, she said. We chose a coffee shop halfway between my house and his, bright, crowded, impossible to stage manage. Victor arrived early, wringing a napkin to ribbons. He looked smaller without Casey's orbit around him. I didn't sign up for this, he blurted before I could sit. I knew about some of it. The transfers. The way Casey reclassified expenses. But throwing you out? Selling your things? Blocking Courtney from the cemetery? His eyes flicked to the window. She changed the gate code, you know. Your mother-in-law tried to visit Joffrey today. They turned her away. My stomach tightened. Is Courtney okay? She's shaken. Morgan, he pushed a folded page across the table. Routing numbers. Dates. Entity names. A quick glance told me they matched files from Joffrey's drive. Why are you giving me this? I asked. Because she's going to burn me too, he said, voice low. She's forging minutes, backdating authorizations. If the board really looks, it won't matter that I kept my head down. I'll go down with her. He swallowed. This is me, not keeping my head down. I tucked the paper into my bag and stood. Then stop living in her shadow and tell the truth when it counts. He nodded, ashamed. You never saw me. We were still on the sidewalk when Courtney called. Her voice was thin, but steady. He's gone, and I still can't bring flowers, she whispered. The groundskeeper says I'm not on the list. I'm coming to get you, I said. Jada was already grabbing the keys. The mausoleum sat quiet behind a black iron fence now guarded by a keypad that blinked a cold red denied when I entered Courtney's old code. The groundskeeper shifted, apologetic. Miss Smith, I'm sorry, ma'am. I have instructions. From whom? I asked. He glanced at the nameplate on his clipboard. Miss Casey Hale. Courtney straightened like she'd found a steel rod in her spine. Young man, she said, calm and lethal, there is a plot in there with my husband and my son. Tell Ms. Hale she does not own my grief. He faltered. Ma'am, Courtney's face drained of color mid-sentence. She gripped the fence, breath hitching. Jada caught her before she slid to the ground. At the ER they called it stress-induced angina. The doctor said the words carefully, like placing glass on a shelf. Avoid confrontation, he advised. Courtney pressed my hand. I'm not afraid of Casey, she murmured. I am afraid of losing what's left of Joffrey. You won't, I promised, even as anger scratched the inside of my ribs. Samuel filed the emergency petition the next morning, injunction, temporary restraining order, order to vacate, preservation of property. He moved like a conductor, precision, cadence, no wasted motion. We spread the evidence on his conference table, Victor's page, the USB files, screenshots of Casey's forged authorizations, the audio recording where she promised to destroy me. Today is triage, Samuel said. We stopped the bleeding. Then we opened the vein in front of a judge. By the time our hearing was set, Casey had escalated. Someone tried to reset my email with a recovery address I didn't recognize. Anonymous comments crawled under my social posts like mold, each one repeating a new rumor. She refused fertility treatment. She forced him to change his will. She's selling his story. Jada, unofficial chief of counterops, deleted and blocked until her thumbs cramped. Let them talk, she told me. We're bringing receipts. I spent the night before court in a strange mixture of terror and calm. Terror, because I had never been inside a courtroom that wasn't on TV, and calm, because Joffrey's letter had turned my fear into instructions. Behind the painting. The code is our anniversary. Trust Samuel. Protect Mom. It read like a recipe, grief in, justice out. We arrived early to a beige room with too many places to sit and nowhere to hide. Casey swept in 15 minutes later in an immaculate suit, Victor 2 steps behind. Her attorney followed, expensive, loud tie, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Casey didn't look at me. She looked through me the way you check for lint on a dress. Samuel leaned close. Remember, facts, not fire. Let them overreach. I nodded, though fire gnawed at my throat. The judge was brisk, all business. We're here on petitioner Morgan Lyle's request for emergency relief, possession of the property, restraining order, asset preservation. She tapped a pen. Counsel, appearances? Casey's attorney launched first, a practiced symphony of insinuations, tragic death, diminished capacity, grieving widow exerting undue influence. I watched his mouth shape Joffrey's name like a tool. Samuel didn't object, he waited. When it was his turn, he rose without theatrics. Your Honor, we are here because respondent has unlawfully occupied my client's home, disposed of her personal property, barred her mother-in-law from a family gravesite, forged documents, and is actively liquidating assets. But I won't ask you to take my word for it. He lifted a small device. I'll ask you to listen. The recording of Casey's voice filled the room, cold and unhurried. If you breathe a word of this, I'll ruin her. Morgan will lose everything, her job, her house, her name. Someone in the gallery whispered, God. The judge's pen stopped tapping. Samuel didn't press the moment. He simply built the staircase, one tread at a time, bank statements with matching transfers, email chains authorizing payments to shell entities, signature comparisons, the outdated will Casey waved around and the later instruments that superseded it. When he introduced the deed and mortgage, both executed years after Thomas Hale's death, he let the dates sit in the silence like anchors. Casey's attorney objected here and there, but the judge's face had shifted into the expression of someone assembling a puzzle whose picture was becoming uncomfortably clear. Ms. Hale, the judge said at last, turning to Casey, do you dispute that you have been residing in Ms. Lyle's home? Casey's smile was all enamel. I assert the home belongs to the family trust. Do you have a trust instrument covering this property? A flicker. Our father intended. Do you have an instrument, the judge repeated, each word a metronome, executed after the property was purchased? Silence. Victor stared at the floor. We broke for a short recess. In the hallway, voices buzzed like a nest kicked open. Casey snapped something at her attorney, he tugged at his cuffs, annoyed. Jada handed me a bottle of water I didn't know I needed. Breathe, she said. You're doing great. I haven't done anything, I whispered. Samuel did. You showed up, she said. Sometimes that's the bravest thing. When the bailiff called us back, the courtroom had acquired new gravity. 3 men in sober suits sat in the second row, each wearing the kind of expression large sums of money tend to breed. I recognized one from photos on the Hale Venture Group website, Harold Whitman, old partner of Thomas Hale, longtime board member. He stood when the judge returned. Your Honor, he said, voice sounded smooth by decades of meetings, may I request leave to address the court briefly on behalf of Hale Venture Group? Casey's head whipped around so fast I heard the whisper of fabric. Her attorney rose, protesting, irrelevant to the narrow issue of possession, Your Honor. The judge considered, then nodded. 2 minutes, Mr. Whitman. Choose them wisely. Harold stepped forward with a slim folder tucked beneath his arm. I watched Casey's composure crack, a hairline fissure racing across porcelain. Victor's hands tightened on the bench until his knuckles blanched. Samuel leaned toward me, voice barely there. This is the part where the room changes. Harold opened the folder. When the recess ended, the courtroom no longer belonged to Casey. The 3 board members sat like stone pillars in the second row, their presence heavier than any gavel. At the center was Harold Whitman, silver-haired, composed, a man whose reputation still carried weight in the Hale Empire. Your Honor, Harold began, stepping forward, we've conducted a preliminary internal audit at Hale Venture Group, prompted by evidence provided by Mrs. Lyles. What we've uncovered corroborates her claims, systematic embezzlement by Casey Hale, spanning over a decade. Casey shot to her feet. This is a lie. Her attorney tugged at her sleeve, whispering furiously, but she shook him off. The judge's gaze sharpened. Ms. Hale, sit down or I will have you removed. Harold continued, unshaken. Funds were diverted into offshore accounts under entities controlled by Ms. Hale and, in some cases, by Mr. Victor Miller. Forged board minutes, falsified contracts, and misappropriated assets, millions siphoned from company reserves. We are cooperating with federal investigators. Hale Venture Group has frozen every account Casey Hale touched. The gallery murmured. Victor stared at his shoes as if the carpet might swallow him whole. Samuel rose smoothly. Your Honor, beyond fraud against the company, my client's evidence shows direct threats of personal destruction. May I? The judge gestured. The audio recording filled the room once more, Casey's voice, venomous, echoing off the paneled walls. If you breathe a word of this, I'll ruin her. Morgan will lose everything, her job, her house, her name. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Courtney, seated behind me, closed her eyes but lifted her chin, as if to let the truth itself steady her. Samuel laid down the final stroke. The property in question was purchased years after Thomas Hale's death, with funds earned by Joffrey and my client. It was never part of the family trust. Here is the deed, here is the mortgage, here are the bank statements. Casey Hale's claim is fabricated. The judge examined the documents, flipping through each page slowly. When she looked up, her expression was cold iron. Ms. Hale, do you have any legal instrument supporting your claim to this residence? Casey's lips parted, but no words came. Her attorney tried to interject, intent, Your Honor, family tradition. Intent, the judge cut him off, is not law. Casey's face twisted, fury breaking through the mask. My father always intended family property to remain with blood Hales. Morgan is barren. She is not family. The room fell silent. Even her attorney winced. The judge's gavel struck once. Enough. That statement is cruel, irrelevant, and it speaks volumes about your motives. This court finds the will presented by Joffrey Hale valid. Ownership of the residence and all associated assets remain with Morgan Lyles. Effective immediately, Casey Hale and Victor Miller are ordered to vacate the premises. Additionally, a restraining order is granted, neither may contact Mrs. Lyles nor enter the property. Casey's mouth opened to protest, but the sound was drowned by the heavy doors at the back of the courtroom swinging open. 2 uniformed officers entered, flanking a woman in a dark suit who carried authority in every step. She lifted a badge. Agent Pack, FBI. Casey Hale, you are under arrest for wire fraud, embezzlement, and financial crimes across state lines. You have the right to remain silent. The rest blurred under the gasps, the clatter of handcuffs, and Casey's voice breaking into a raw, desperate scream. This is a conspiracy. Joffrey was supposed to be mine, his house, his legacy, all of it. The judge banged the gavel again. Remove her from my courtroom. Victor slumped into his chair, covering his face. His attorney gathered papers with the speed of a man fleeing a burning building. The board members whispered to Samuel, nodding gravely. Courtney squeezed my hand, whispering, she can't hurt us anymore. But I wasn't sure. Not yet. Outside the courthouse, the reporters had already gathered, microphones thrust like weapons. Samuel shielded me, speaking briefly, my client has no comment at this time. This was never about money. This was about truth. Victor lingered near the steps, eyes hollow. Morgan, he said softly, I'm filing for divorce. I'm out. I saved what I could of your belongings before she sold them. He handed me a key. The guards are gone. The house is yours again. I took the key without replying. Sympathy for Victor was a luxury I couldn't afford. He had stood by while Casey gutted my life. Regret came too late. Jada pulled me into the car, her grip fierce. You won, she said. I looked out the window at the courthouse shrinking behind us. Did I? I wondered. That night, I walked back into the house that had been stolen from me. Boxes cluttered the halls. The gardens were torn, the rooms painted in garish colors, my wedding china gone forever. But it was mine again. On the nightstand in our bedroom, I found something I hadn't expected, a small leather journal. The handwriting inside was Joffrey's. The last entry stopped me cold. If love is measured by how it changes us, then mine for Morgan is infinite. She is my anchor. She is my legacy. If I fail, she will finish the fight I began. My tears fell silently onto the page. For the first time since Joffrey's death, I let myself believe I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was carrying his legacy forward. Reclaiming the house was both a victory and a heartbreak. I stood in the foyer that first night, the silence so loud it pressed against my chest. Casey had left behind chaos, garish paint on the walls, my garden uprooted, rooms stripped of warmth. Some pieces of my life were gone forever, wedding gifts sold to strangers, heirlooms discarded like trash. But the walls still stood, and with them, the chance to rebuild. Courtney moved into the guest house at Samuel's urging. Her doctor warned against living alone after the stress-induced angina. She unpacked her few belongings with quiet grace, filling the small cottage with family photos Casey hadn't managed to erase. For the first time, we were two widows under one roof, bound not only by grief but by survival. Together we began sorting what remained. On rainy afternoons, we sat cross-legged on the floor surrounded by boxes of Joffrey's things, his cufflinks, his notebooks, scraps of paper with his half-finished ideas. He never stopped planning, Courtney whispered once, holding a page that listed everything from home repairs to potential vacation spots. Even when Thomas died, even when Casey grew spiteful, he planned for life. In Joffrey's journal, I found the note that had undone me in court. She is my anchor. She is my legacy. Every time I reread it, the words steadied me like a hand on my back. But peace didn't come quickly. Rumors lingered, whispers circulated, and my absence from school stretched on. The principal called again. Morgan, the board is supportive, but you've been through so much. Are you ready to return? Yes, I said firmly. And I meant it. My first day back, my third graders greeted me with painted banners. Welcome back, Miss Lyles. Their little hands thrust drawings into mine, hearts, houses, stick figures with brown curls like mine. Teaching again felt like inhaling fresh air after weeks underwater. In their bright eyes, I remembered why Joffrey always said, family is more than biology. These children were my family too. Meanwhile, the wheels of justice turned relentlessly. Casey's trial became a minor sensation in business circles. Prosecutors unveiled the files Joffrey had collected, offshore transfers, falsified board minutes, even an audio file where she bragged to Victor about bleeding the company dry. Casey's defense was desperate. She claimed Joffrey fabricated the evidence, that he was mentally unstable, that I manipulated him. None of it held. Board members testified to his integrity. Victor, in exchange for leniency, admitted his role and confirmed Casey's schemes stretched back more than a decade. When the verdict came, guilty on all counts, Casey stood in chains, her expression twisted with rage. The judge sentenced her to 15 years in federal prison, restitution required, parole barred for at least 10. As the gavel struck, she finally looked at me. Her eyes held no apology, only the hollow fury of someone who had lost everything she believed she deserved. I felt no triumph. Only relief. Relief that she couldn't touch us anymore. In the aftermath, the board of Hale Venture Group reached out. Harold Whitman himself called. We failed Joffrey by not listening sooner, he admitted. We'd like to honor his integrity. They arranged for me to receive the full value of Joffrey's shares and pension. It wasn't just money, it was an acknowledgement that Joffrey had been right all along. With Samuel's help, I founded the Joffrey Hale Foundation, dedicated to helping widows facing property disputes and financial fraud. Support poured in from unexpected places, former colleagues of Joffrey's, clients who had trusted his advice, even parents from my school. Each success story we funded felt like planting another seed in the garden Casey had torn up. 3 months after the sentencing, Courtney and I hosted a small gathering in the backyard. Neighbors brought food, Jada lit candles, and together we replanted roses along the fence line. For every root she pulled out, Courtney said, pressing soil around a sapling, we'll plant 2 more. Healing wasn't linear. Some nights I still woke gasping, reaching for a man who would never be beside me again. But grief softened, reshaped itself into something I could carry. Therapy, support groups, and the laughter of my students patched the cracks Casey had tried to widen. 1 year after Joffrey's death, I stood at his grave with fresh flowers. The mausoleum door code had been changed back, and Courtney and I visited together. I knelt by his name etched in stone. I kept our home, I whispered. I protected Mom. And I'm learning how to live again, Joffrey. One day at a time. That evening, Courtney handed me a sealed envelope. He gave me this months before he passed. He told me to give it to you when you were ready. Inside was another journal, his private reflections. The last entry read: If love is measured by what it builds, then ours has built more than a life. It has built resilience, purpose, and a legacy. Morgan, if I am gone, let that legacy be yours too. I cried as I hadn't in months, raw, cleansing sobs. Then I opened the windows, letting the night air rush through the house that was ours again. 5 years later, the house is not just shelter. It is a sanctuary filled with laughter, art projects from my students, and Courtney's steady presence in the guest house. The roses bloom each spring, stubborn and bright. The foundation thrives, helping women who once felt as powerless as I had on that night Casey threw me out. Sometimes, standing in the studio I built from Joffrey's office, I paint the lighthouse he once hid the safe behind. Its beam cuts through storm and dark alike. A reminder that love, when true, does not vanish with death. It transforms into light that keeps us steady. Courtney often quotes Thomas, Joffrey's father, true wealth isn't what you own. It's what you build that outlasts you. I finally understand. Joffrey built a legacy of love, truth, and resilience. And I am still building it now.